Mr. S.Y. Quraishi, who's served as an IAS officer with distinction. He's been the Chief Election Commissioner of India and a prolific author, and who's authored several books and is a strong voice for democracy. Thank you, sir, for taking time out for this interview. So you've come out with your new book, Democracy's Heartland. Now, you've said in your book that South Asia is not peripheral to the global story of democracy, but is central to it in the book. However, the journey of democracy here in this region has been checkered, and countries besides India haven't had the best of the democratic journey. So, aren't these two statements contradictory? What has been the idea behind the book?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you. Why I thought of the book, when I was doing research for my own earlier book, An Undocumented Wonder, The Making of the Great Indian Election, I came across the term that India is a flawed democracy. So I started analyzing why is it regarded as flawed democracy. Then initially I was very angry and upset that this is a conspiracy of the West. But then I realized they described us as flawed because of the problems like criminalization, underrepresentation of women, the kind of weaknesses we ourselves were talking about. So then I started examining the state of democracy in the neighborhood also. And besides, I've traveled to most of these countries observing their elections or on various occasions. So I came across a startling fact. First, that just these 8 countries of SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, out of 203 countries, they are 25% of the world's population. And in the democratic world of more than 100 countries, they are 40% of world's democracy. But they do not get, SAARC countries do not get the attention we deserve. Second thing which I want to bring out through this book is that when we talk of South Asia, 99% we are only talking of India. Because surely, because we have a big size and big economy, we have big everything, but that doesn't mean that the other 7 countries are insignificant. So there are very good, interesting things about them, and there are certain things we can learn from them. So this undermining of those 7 democracies also, I thought is something which I should highlight, that South Asia is more than India. It is 8 countries and they are equally important in democratic evolution.
Sir, this book comes out at a time when there's massive unrest in Nepal, and the democracy in this region is in focus. How do you see the developments in Nepal? Do you think that democracy is finding it difficult to take root there? How do you see the developments that
on the contrary, I see it as a sign of democracy taking roots, because this movement is a democratic movement. And immediately within 2 days they settle down, and they said that they would have a prime minister who is honest. So actually this is a sign of a very living and vibrant democracy and not anarchy. Of course there was corruption, there has been political instability, there have been 5 prime ministers in as many years. So there have been 7 constitutions in the last 70 years. So political instability has been the hallmark of Nepal. At the same time, the latest constitution of 2015 is a very good constitution, because it gave a lot of importance and power to women. And one very strong thing which we have a debate in India about the appointment procedure for the election commissioner. In Nepal, it is a constitutional council which consists of leader of opposition, chief justice, the speaker and the prime minister, which decides the name, and after that a joint parliamentary committee from both houses of 15 MPs cross-question them, examines these candidates, and then only the selection is made. So there are various things we can learn from very small countries with that Nepal is.
Interestingly, in your book, you've also talked about the ban on TikTok in Nepal that had happened some time ago, and you've said that it highlighted the challenges Nepal faces in balancing regulation and digital freedoms. So, what is your take on the democratic government there imposing such restrictions on civil liberties? And do you think is there there's a trend to move away from the liberal democratic setup in such moves?
Well, I don't think the intention of the government was to suppress the voice of Nepalese people. In fact, perhaps that was their measure and step against the independence of these platforms, because they had not registered themselves in Nepal. They could not be subjected to any discipline of Nepal. So they asked them to comply. They refused to comply. As a result, they banned them all, not realizing that it has become so much a part of everyone's life in Nepal, particularly when 10% of Nepalis are abroad. Their only communication with the family is through the social media. If those channels of communication stopped, there was a lot of anger and frustration, because it was not just for playing games that they were using these media, it was basically for communication. So, which is why they came out on the streets, and you know the result.
Sir, what are the lessons that India can take from Nepal, from the happenings that have taken place recently? And do you think that the Indian government needs to learn from the Nepal experience in framing of policies that may affect individual freedoms?
Well, the lesson for not only India, for everyone, is that you can't take youth for granted. Because once they get agitated, it is very difficult to stop them. It happened in Bangladesh earlier. It had happened 3 years ago in Sri Lanka. So it's a very common story. So for the lesson for India, don't take the youth for granted. Secondly, also don't tinker with the liberty and action against social media, because the entire nation is now dependent on the social media. You may have any other reason, legal or otherwise, but the fact that the whole nation is dependent on social media, so we have to be very careful regulating them.
In the book, you've listed the different democratic journeys of the SAARC countries. Do you think all the countries need to learn from each other and improve? Taking such examples like countries can learn from Nepal and what has happened there.
Yes, of course. That is the theme of my book, that 8 countries, they have the democracies of different stages, different kinds, and there is something to learn from each one of them for India. And of course, India as the leader, India as the most established democracy, has to do the hand-holding of the democracies which are still struggling. And in fact, we have a provision for that. We set up about 2011 in my time, an institute called India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, where basically to train our own election staff. But since we were setting up the infrastructure, we threw it open to international election commission. And I am very happy to tell you that in 12 years, 143 countries have come for training from this institute, and not just school or college students, but election managers, including election commissioners of these countries. So we want to be Wish Guru. In this case, we have already established ourselves as Wish Guru. They are coming regularly to train from us. Also, in Government of India, when it was set up in 2011, announced a concession to the SAARC countries, that every year 2 courses for 30 people for 15 days will be sponsored by Government of India, Ministry of External Affairs. So for 30 persons every year have been coming for 15 days each for the last 12 years. So I think 70 to 80% or 90% of all election managers in these 7 countries have trained from India. So that is the elder brother role that we have played. But the elder brother is fine, but big brother is not acceptable.
You've also dwelt in the book about in a great deal about Pakistan. Pakistan, obviously, along with Afghanistan, probably has had the most checkered record in terms of its democratic journey. And as we've seen in the recent military conflict also, that several times it has been found that the military calls the shots there. So would you say that Pakistan is the country that has fared the worst in the democratic barometer in this region?
Yes, indeed it has, because the fact that there have been 3 coups in the last 70 years, and once the army gets used to power, it becomes their habit. So at the drop of a hat, they come and take over. I'm happy that Nepal is lucky that their army chief has kept away from politics. Otherwise, it was his opportunity to stage a coup. And why coup? The government had fallen. He could have just stepped in and become the ruler himself, but he did not. So God bless him and God bless Nepal, that they are still, their democracy is still surviving. But in Pakistan, it has gone for a 6. It has, everyone knows that the elected government has no power at all. The army decides everything, the foreign policy, the domestic policy, or virtually everything.
So how do you see the future of Pakistan in terms of democracy taking root? Do you see that the future is gloomy, or you're hopeful that things could turn for the better?
Well, at the moment, if you go by history, it is gloomy, because the army is more powerful than ever before. They haven't staged a coup, but informally they are virtually the rulers. So they giving up this role easily is, I do not visualize in the near future. But we can only hope that someday, of course, one positive thing is 3 consecutive governments up to the current one have been elected governments, and otherwise no elected government has completed its term. It was always overtaken by a coup, but 3 governments have taken from each other, and one hopes that this tradition continues and democracy gets stronger.
So coming to India, in your book, and I quote that you've said that India appears to be veering towards a model of illiberal democracy akin to that observed in Turkey or Russia. Can you elaborate on that statement?
Well, the fact that the government is showing the signs of authoritarianism, majoritarianism, it's writ large, everybody is talking about it. The way they come down heavily on any dissenting voice, the way the media has been controlled, either bought over or frightened into submission. There's hardly the freedom of speech available. Any 2-3 media houses which are still standing up, they have been raided, there have been under scrutiny. So these are not very good and healthy signs for democracy. It's only because India is democracy has taken roots in India, that and democracy globally has shown resilience, that we will withstand what is happening, and hopefully democracy, as India is known for, will get restored.
So what you're saying is that democracy is there in India, but you would describe it as an illiberal democracy?
Well, at the moment it has become an illiberal democracy, without doubt. I mean, we should not live in a fool's paradise and just keep on showering false praise on ourselves. We should do honest introspection. We should know our strength, and we have plenty. And for instance, the biggest election in the world is conducted with clockwork precision by 15 million people. For the last 75 years, the transition of power has been most smooth and faultlessly. It doesn't happen in African countries and in many other parts of the country. Elections get disputed, but not once have our election results been disputed, and the changeover of power from the defeated to the winning party has been very, very smooth. That's something which we should be proud of.
I'm glad you brought in that how India has conducted its elections over the years, and India is one of the biggest democracies. So you've headed the institution which is considered the watchdog of democracy in India, the Election Commission. Now, serious questions have been raised on its credibility by leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi, and he has in fact gone on to question the sanctity of the basic unit of democracy, which is one man, one vote. What is your take on such allegations?
You know, when I hear any criticism of election commission, I feel very concerned and I feel very hurt. Not only as a citizen of India, but having been chief election commissioner myself, I also laid a brick or two in that institution. When I see that institution under attack or getting weakened in any way, I feel concerned, and election commission itself has to do introspection and has to feel concerned. It is up to them to stand up to all the forces and the pressures which may be influencing their decisions, and they have to win the confidence of the people. You know, on the one hand, you need the confidence of the opposition party. For me, I always gave preference to the opposition parties because they are the underdogs. Party in power has all the power. They don't need so much of pampering as the opposition does, because they are out of power. So my instruction generally to all my staff was that throw the doors open. If they want an appointment, give them immediately. Listen to them, talk to them. If they want some small favor, do it, if it is not at the cost of somebody else. So here the opposition has to go to Supreme Court every now and then. 23 parties go, look, we are not getting an appointment, nobody is listening to us. And mentioning Rahul Gandhi, he is a leader of opposition after all. To shout at him the way the election commission did, I think it is not like the election commission that we have known. He is after all leader. He is not a man in the street. He is a leader of opposition. He is representing millions of people. He is voicing the opinion of millions of people. And to say that you have to give an affidavit, otherwise we'll do this, we'll do that. The body language and the language used is both objectionable and offensive. And I have often said that suppose they also turn around and say that, okay, you are coming up with new rules, please give an affidavit that they are mistake free. And if there is a mistake, you will be held criminally liable. Can you think of that situation? But you never know when it comes to that.
So, do you think that instead of asking for an affidavit and giving a 7-day deadline, the Election Commission should have ordered a probe because a lot of questions were being raised on the SIR?
Absolutely. They immediately, anybody, not just the leader of opposition, if anybody had complained, that has been our normal practice. We immediately order a probe, because not only we have to be fair, we have to appear to be fair. So, and the probe brings out the facts. So, instead of the way the election commission responded, the probe was the right thing to do, and which they missed as an opportunity.
In fact, Mr. Gandhi has just yesterday and even just before that, he has again said that he'll come out with more such allegations. He'll drop that he has likened to a hydrogen bomb. So how do you look at these continuous allegations being made and the Election Commission's responses? Do you think that there could be a middle path that has to be found?
Well, leader of opposition, of course, has used these kind of terms, because some of it is and most of it is a political rhetoric which has to be taken as such only. But at the same time, if there are serious issues, serious complaints which he is raising, they need to be investigated in detail and to the satisfaction not only of the leader of opposition but of the whole nation. The whole nation is watching. You are asking this question on behalf of the people of India, isn't it?
So you think that confidence has been shaken among the people? What's your perception?
Do you have any doubt? Of course, definitely.
Moving on, in a recent article of yours, you had said that the EPIC should be made part of the documents demanded by EC along with the Aadhaar and the SIR matter. And so what is your take on the whole issue of SIR and EPIC not being included, because you've yourself been part of that process and EPIC was an initiative of the Election Commission. So what's your take on that?
You know, I'm really surprised, and which is what I wrote in my article, that EPIC is issued by the Election Commission itself. And Election Commission not recognizing it, it has very serious implications. First of all, remember, it has taken Election Commission 30 years to reach 99% people or 98% people. Even in the electoral roll to come to this level of perfection, it has taken us, we have now 99% rolls. 1% is updated every year by door-to-door summary inquiry. We go door to door. Okay, look, we come to your house. Okay, look, these are 4 voters listed in your electoral roll at the moment. In the last 1 year or 6 months, has there been any change? Has somebody died? Has somebody migrated so that we delete? Or has somebody become 18 or has come from outside so that we add? So that's a normal thing. So to throw the existing roll in the dustbin and to start all over again, so you are trying to do in 3 months what we had done in 30 years. So it is buying trouble. So it is not only opening a Pandora's box. I think Election Commission has put its hand in hornet's nest, and it is going to hurt them. Of course, the Supreme Court has already said that, use Aadhaar. They started only because of the pressure of Supreme Court. They started using Aadhaar. I'm surprised that Supreme Court did not follow up on EPIC, which is the Election Commission's own creation. Now, one dangerous implication, which even I had not mentioned in my article because it was pointed out to me by the former ambassador to Nepal. We between India and Nepal, we travel freely on the basis of an identity card, and the best identity card which is accepted is voter ID card. I have traveled to Nepal several times using EPIC and not my passport. Now, Nepal government can easily turn around, as they had done earlier. When Aadhaar became controversial, they dropped Aadhaar as an acceptable document. Now, suppose they say, look, you yourself are not recognizing your EPIC, we will not allow EPIC as an acceptable document, please bring your passport. Now, how many people in Bihar, UP or Uttarakhand have a passport? Not even 1%. So, what great inconvenience it will cause to the people. I don't think the Election Commission thought it through, and that implication is yet to dawn on people.
Moving on to your book, another section of your book where you've also talked in detail about Bangladesh. Now, it has gone through a lot of turmoil recently, as we saw last year also. It's talked about elections next year. So, what is your take on democracy taking roots there, and how its journey has been, and what future do you see for democracy in that country?
Well, actually, Bangladesh also has a checkered history. They have had 2 military coups, but for the last 15, 20, 30 years, I think democracy has continued. And interestingly, 2 ladies have dominated the political scene. And Sheikh Hasina, who was doing her 2nd term now, or maybe it is the 3rd, she became a little too authoritarian. So that is where the lesson is, that if you become too authoritarian, the public resentment, because public responds sooner or later. So that is one thing. Otherwise, but Bangladesh has done very well in economic parameters. Their human development index has improved, and in fact, it was doing much better than India in many of these factors. So, in fact, the people lightheartedly used to say that there will be reverse migration now, since Bangladesh has started doing well economically. So, the setback to that government. Of course, there are external forces which cause that regime change. Just a month before the election, I had met Sheikh Hasina, 2nd or 3rd time in my last 10 years, and she mentioned a very interesting thing. She said, America is after me, and they want that I should be friends with my main opposition, Khalida Zia. And she says, look, the day I see Biden and Trump holding hands and shaking hands, I will also go and embrace her. So they are asking her to be friendly with the opposition, and what kind of opposition is playing out in USA. So that's obviously an interesting point you made.
In your book, it seems as if reading that you seem to be very critical of the spotlight always being on Western democracies. and democracies in South Asia and in such regions being not being given that much focus as they should. So, but having such a checkered history in the region, besides India, the others have had their share of checkered history as far as democracy is concerned. So, do you think that there could be a focus on South Asia more when when other democracies are being promoted in Africa and other parts, and in terms of funding and things like that? Do you think more needs to be done, and it has been found wanting from the Western countries that democracy has not taken root in these countries?
Yes, exactly. That is what I have tried to point out, that the fact that these 8 countries have 40% of world's democracy living here, which means it should be treated with some respect and importance. But there is very little interest of UN agencies, international donors, universities which have South Asia division, the foundations. They are not giving adequate attention for strengthening democracy in this region. And please remember, they are all around the neck of China. So the biggest bulwark against China's authoritarian regime is a strong democracy in the region. So, but the investment that the world community is making in this region is very, very negligible, disconcerted. Individually, some country may be operating in one of the SAARC countries, but as an organized effort, as a concerted effort, in synchronization, that is not what is happening, and that is what I have tried to emphasize through my book. I have recommended that there should be more investment, academic, political, financial, and we must strengthen these democracies. And of course, that is where India has to play a big role, because we are the elder brother and we have established democracy with firm roots, and we are contributing in some way, as I mentioned, through the training. And we have an MOU with most of these countries. Every year on National Voters Day, 25th January, we invite these 7 countries, and when Election Commission organizes a 2-day brainstorming on topics of importance of that time.
But do you think that the bilateral tensions have also had a negative impact on cooperation in this on democracy and exchanges on democracy in that?
Yes, SAARC has become weakened politically, particularly because of the bilateral tensions between India and Pakistan. Obviously, in any international organization, this is a rule that every decision has to be with unanimity, not one has to dissent. So, if India and Pakistan don't agree, this is not, since 2014 the SAARC meeting has not taken place. But fortunately, this is the political side of it, but election commissions are not political, they are independent of the politics and the government. So, election commissions had formulated, while I was still in the commission, an organization called FAMBOSA, Forum of Election Management Bodies of South Asia. So, now we cooperate, we continue to meet regularly, and that interaction is helping sharing of information, experience sharing. So, I have advocated through the book that we should have similar organization beyond election commission, but outside the government. As we have in ASEAN, that region, there is a forum, there is an European Union or something, some international organizations working together. Similarly, the non-government and non-election bodies also should come together, and there could be some fora created for such an activity.
So, my final question to you is that in summing up the arguments, what is your assessment of the trajectory of democracy in South Asia? Where does it stand, and is the future bright for a democratic setup, or other forms of governance are gaining more traction? Your final word.
Well, I would rather be optimistic, and as I said, even in the context of Nepal, that a student coming to the street, for me is democracy and not an anarchy. So, and they wanted more democracy. It's not that they wanted to do away with democracy, they want more democracy, genuine and honest democracy. And within 2 days, things have settled down, and they are trying to find an honest prime minister. And I think democracy has a lot of resilience. Globally, it has been backsliding, but at the same time it has shown resilience in many parts of the world, and hopefully the SAARC region also will bounce back wherever it is going downhill. It will bounce back and democracy will become the norm.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for sparing time for this.